Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. Today is the 7th of December 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So before we get into the news, just wanted to say a quick thanks to everyone who wished me well on the 700th episode from yesterday. It was interesting to see all the replies of when you guys started listening. A couple of people said they had listened since day one, and even the ETH Hub days or the Into the Ether days when I used to do that with Eric Connor. So yeah, thank you to everyone for being long-term supporters of the show there. I hope you've learned a lot from me over the years, and you're going to continue to learn a lot from me over the years to come, because as I mentioned yesterday, I have no plans on stopping the refuel. You know, I sometimes get pretty frustrated with the crypto ecosystem, especially going on crypto Twitter and seeing all the bad narratives being spread, which I'm actually going to talk about more at the end of this episode today. But what keeps me going, really, and what I don't want to stop doing is the refuel. I enjoy it way too much. I enjoy educating people way too much, and I just enjoy keeping up with the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, you guys are stuck with me for years to come. Maybe not. Maybe stuck with me is the wrong term to use there. Maybe you enjoy being stuck with me. I'm sure you do. But anyway, I'm going to move into the news now. Enough about that. So first up here, we have an update from the Ethereum Foundation Ecosystem Support Program. So they posted earlier this year, the ESP hosted the Run a Node grants round to encourage the exploration of diverse ideas for operating nodes beyond running a validator. And then you can click into this blog post and see which projects were actually supported here. There were a total of 243 applicants. Out of all the applications that they evaluated, they selected 30 recipients from 23 different countries to receive support to run nodes. And you can actually see the geographic distribution of the nodes here. Sadly, it doesn't look like anywhere were selected for Australia or even our friends in New Zealand here, but there was representation across Asia, North America, Europe, South America, and Africa. So I think pretty much like everywhere except like every continent except Australia here, but I mean, they can't cover everything, especially when there's only 35 recipients here for them to cover, but essentially the hardware choice was either a custom build or dapp node. Dapp node accounted for 83%, custom build about 16%, and then you can scroll down, you can actually see each of the 35 recipients here listed, and basically a little description about them. So if you're interested in learning about that, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But generally, you know, I'm obviously in favor of any efforts to get more people to run Ethereum full nodes and to run validators. I know that running a validator is obviously a taller ask as a solo validator, because you either have to have 32 ETH or you have to have 8 ETH and some RPL if you want to run a Rockepool mini pool, or you can do things like DVT now with Obel. They currently allow for 10 people to squad stake, so you can just bring 3.2 ETH each. But really, when you think about kind of the global, I guess, population and how much money they would have access to be able to spin up a validator, like even 3.2 ETH is a huge ask, guys. Like that's over 10. No, I'm thinking in Australian dollars right now. I should say it in US dollars. That's like over $6,000, right? I mean, almost $7,000 or something like that US. Definitely over 10,000 Australian. Most people do not have that, in their bank account, let alone to spare. So when we think about allowing people to stake or run a validator within Ethereum, we do have to collapse that down even further than that. But then there's also the hardware cost too, which isn't obviously expensive, but still it's a cost that they have to endure, as well as having an active internet connection and active electricity. So there's a lot more that goes into it when we're talking about the global community, because you can talk about first world countries and first world places like obviously the US and Europe and things like that. There's a lot of places like that, but then there are a lot of places that aren't anything like that, right? There are a lot of places that don't have necessarily super reliable internet and power, but even on top of that, even if they do, as I said, the people don't have the money in order to be able to afford the hardware, let alone the capital cost to run a validator there. And at the same time as well, there's also a limit here, because you can drop the validator cost down to, like, let's just say 0.1 ETH, and at current prices that's $220 or something like that, right? So let's say it's $220 that you have to put up in order to run a validator, because you're using some DVT technology and then you're squad staking with other people and you're able to run a validator. Okay, now how much money are you making on that? Well, you're not making very much, because even if you're making like 4% on $220, that's basically nothing. Okay, so why does that matter? Like, okay, it's obviously not nothing, and maybe it means something to people, but why does that matter? Well, it matters because it more than certainly is costing you way more than the rewards that you're getting in order to run that validator using the hardware and also paying for internet and paying for electricity. So really, there is a point where you reach an equilibrium of being a profitable immutable validator, and that point is way above 0.1 ETH or even 1 ETH, depending on hardware, electricity and internet costs, of course, and also just time costs too. So, and this isn't unique to Ethereum. This is unique to basically everything, right? Like, and this is the thing. Like, if you are going to stake with that small amount, and you want to be able to make a return and not have the costs associated with it, then of course you're not going to be running your own validator, right? You're not going to be running your own full node. What you're going to be doing is staking with another provider, such as Lido, or buying STETH, buying RETH, buying CBETH, or staking with Coinbase or Binance, because obviously if you've only got like if you've only got even 1 ETH at current prices, it may not be worth it to you, because the rewards that you're getting from that do not make up for your running costs, even though the running costs are very low compared to proof of work, or just generally on Ethereum. It's still something that I think that you have to have a certain amount of capital to justify the cost. Now, of course, you can run a full node, and just running a full node without a validator attached is always running it at a loss pretty much, unless you're running some sort of business of it that you have paying customers for. But generally, you're running it at a loss because you're not getting a reward for that. And the thing is that that's why people run a full node and run validators attached to it, to make it worth their while. But also, running a full node is definitely something that you want to do just to be self-sovereign, and you want people to have the ability to do as well, in order to verify the chain. I mean, there's so many obviously things that go into it, not just the profitability aspect. But I think that's what a lot of people miss about lowering the barrier to entry to run an Ethereum validator, is that I'd love to lower it as much as possible, but at a certain point, it just does not make economic sense to do so, and it becomes a losing thing for people. And people can obviously cover the costs in different ways, and maybe they're happy to do that. But if we're talking about targeting the people that don't have much money to begin with, then they're definitely better off staking with a provider. And you know what? We have more of these providers coming online all the time, not just the bigger ones, but also a lot of the smaller ones now. Stakewise V3 went live recently. There's Swell, a bunch of others. I'm not gonna obviously Diva, but all these things that are coming online or have come online that you can stake with. That's obviously better to go with them than the bigger players, because you support the network, you support decentralization. But really, we can't expect people at a certain point to run a validator or run a full node, because it's just not economically sound for them to do that. Especially, if let's just say even 1 ETH is way above their monthly salary or something like that, which is true for a lot of places around the world, even in first world countries, guys. Like, I think in crypto, we may be, I don't know if we're blind to it, but we kind of don't think about it too much, because in crypto, like, the money becomes this kind of thing that's imaginary. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but like in crypto, because money is such like an ingrained thing in it, and it's so abstract, and we see these numbers all the time, they kind of lose meaning for us, right? Like, you look at CoinGecko, and you see a coin going up, and the coin is worth like $1 billion or something like that, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, it's worth $1 billion, whatever. But I mean, this is what I mean. Like, that's a $1 billion market cap. Yes, obviously, like, if everyone wanted to sell, it wouldn't be worth $1 billion. But I think that as an ecosystem, as a space, we lose sight of just how much money is thrown around in crypto, and we can become desensitized to it, and that makes us lose sight of how little money a lot of people have around the world, especially to do things like crypto. Not just crypto investing, but getting involved with on-chain stuff, which of course comes back to obviously all the scaling stuff as well, right? I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think this is important to talk about. And I'll finish it up with the scaling stuff, but the scaling stuff as well, right? With obviously Ethereum layer 1 is super expensive, and most of the world is never going to be able to afford the gas fees on that. And that's the way it is. That's the way Ethereum has chosen to scale. We've kept layer 1 relatively limited, and then we're going to scale via layer 2s and bring those costs down. And I think that is a lot of something that a lot of people miss within crypto, is that like Ethereum could be as scalable and performant at layer 1 as some of these other chains, but it has chosen not to do that, right? It has chosen to go down a different path for scaling. And obviously, in the end game, we want fees to basically be non-existent. As I've said before, fees will be abstracted away. Even if the fees are like really, really small, they'll be abstracted away or baked into the user actions, things like that, right? People may even sell kind of like bundles of services to people through a centralized intermediary. It's going to take all these different shapes and forms. But really, when you're trying to target the entire planet, you want to bring costs down as much as possible, of course, but at the same time, you have to realize that there are different kind of things that different participants can do based on the economics of the entire system and based on what actually makes economical sense. Because you can try and ignore the economics of the system, you can try and ignore economic reality, but that's not how the world works. The world works based on economics and economic reality, and it's not just from a money perspective. It's not just from like getting paid or tangible money like fiat or cryptocurrencies. I'm talking about the very definition of value, right? Because time has value, your possessions have value, right? They have opportunity cost, all these sorts of things that are maybe intangible value, but that's valuable nonetheless. So when we're talking in that broader aspect of things, there's a lot more things to consider than just making something as cheap as possible to run, right? Because then, as I said, there's economical kind of properties to that, and the world runs. That's how the world works. That's how humans work. That's how we've worked since the dawn of time. I mean, we went from valuing who's got the biggest literal stick to defend their cave from other tribes, right? To now being basically, hey, who's got the most amount of money to be able to afford to affect government policy, for example, right? With lobbying and stuff like that. So there's a whole kind of spectrum here, and it's evolved over time, of course. But at the end of the day, the reality is that the world runs on what's valuable and what's not, and different people have different values, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to end it here because I could talk about this for a long time. This is one of the most fascinating subjects to me, but I'm going to digress on that point and move on to the next bit of news from today. So this isn't actually news as much as it is just a shout out here. So Tim Taiko did an entire kind of slideshow here, and there's a video, I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but this is all about Ethereum governance and how Ethereum governance actually works. So if you've ever been curious about Ethereum governance and how it works and how decisions get made in Ethereum and how everything works within Ethereum, this is coming from basically the source, essentially. Tim Taiko is, very, very involved within the Ethereum core development process, has been for a very long time now, and there's probably no one better to discuss Ethereum governance than him. So this is a real treat to get this. So I highly suggest going and checking this out, maybe after the refuel. Maybe you can pause the refuel, go watch this. But I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. As I said, there are slides attached to it as well, so you definitely want to be watching it. But it was a great watch. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm already, mostly aware of how Ethereum governance works, but just watching it and hearing it from Tim and hearing his views on things was incredibly insightful. So definitely go check that out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so the Rockepool or Rocket Rescue Node is now available for solo stakers. So solo stakers can now use this service as a fallback beacon node for maintenance and emergencies. Access is granted for 10 days at a time, twice per year. So for those of you who don't know what this is, it's basically, as it says, a backup node for you to connect to in case your one falls over. Now, this has been available in the Rockepool system for quite a while now, but now it's available for solo node operators. So you can go check this out. I'll link in the YouTube description below if this applies to you. But I mean, this definitely is not the only way to have a backup for your node. Obviously, you can have another PC running in your house as a backup, but the whole point of the Rockepool Rescue Node is that basically, if something goes wrong with your setup, you can use this as a community-run, trust minimized thing in order to essentially have a backup for your solo node or for your Rockepool node. So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to these guys. You can go check them out. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so EigenLayer is expanding. I mentioned the other week that EigenLayer had whitelisted or had chosen 6 new LSTs to add to their platform and obviously raising the restaking caps. Now, this is going to be happening on, I believe, I read the date just before. I've lost the date here. I think it's happening soon. I think that because this blog post is where they actually announced the date of where these LSTs will be going live. And the 6 LSTs, by the way, are OS ETH, which is Stakewise is ETH, Swell ETH, OETH, which is Origin Protocol, ETHX, which is Stater, WBETH, which is Binance, and Anchor ETH, which is Anchor here. So these will be going live. Here's the date on December 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So the LSTs will be integrated following a 10-day waiting period from the queued unpaused multi-sig governance transaction triggered today. Oh, I didn't even know that. They have a pause on their governance transactions of 10 days. So even though they triggered it today, it will take 10 days for it to actually be activated, which means that, yeah, as I said, December 18th, 10 a.m. PT, the restaking caps will be lifted and these 6 new LSTs will be added. So if you're interested in getting involved with this, then you can go mark this on your calendars. But you can also check out this EigenLayer thread. It's got a bunch more information about the caps and stuff like that, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so just an update here from the Coinbase effort to do their Coinbase Verifications program, which is basically the program of Coinbase users being able to do an on-chain attestation using the Ethereum attestation service of their Ethereum address to their Coinbase account in order to take advantage of perks on the Base network. Now, there's been over 50,000 attestations with a verified account and country, 33 plus thousand unique users, and 30% of all Ethereum attestation services attestations have been from this Coinbase verification thing. Now, this is really cool because the fact that there's already been 33,000 unique users in, what is it, like 5 or 6 weeks since they made this go live. You can actually see this in the chart here. It gives us a pretty good, pretty good idea of how many really plugged in on-chain users there are right now, because there hasn't really been a great way to be able to have any certainty over how many on-chain Ethereum users there actually are, whether it's on Ethereum L1 or L2s. We can't tie addresses to individual people, but we can, like in the vanilla state, but we can tie addresses to individual people if those people choose to attest to their address using their Coinbase account, which is obviously KYC verified, so that we know that they're a unique human, or at least we have relative certainty. Obviously, KYC can be bought and some slip through the cracks of Coinbase's verification system, but generally this is going to be a really good gauge for how many active users or how many actual on-chain users there actually are on these platforms. So just really great to see there's been a massive uptick here, as you can see, and I'm looking forward to seeing this grow more, but you can go check out the Do Analytics dashboard that tracks all of this for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Taiko has introduced something today called the Based Contestable Rollup, or BCR, which is a configurable multi-proof rollup design. So the TLDR, from my reading of what this is that they're basically mixing together validity proofs and a kind of, I guess, pseudo fraud proof system, or I mean, I wouldn't say pseudo fraud proof system, but basically a fraud proof system. So that, from my understanding, as I said, like, I'm not completely up to speed on this yet, but from my understanding, what this would do is that you could have multiple people submitting a validity proof, and then people have a time to challenge those validity proofs with a fraud proof. So they play the challenge game there, and this can lead to a better, more secure rollup, and can actually lessen the risks of there being a critical bug within the ZK system itself, which is one of the things that I think a lot of the ZK teams are worried about, is critical bugs, and that's why they have multi-sigs, right? And that's why they try their best to mitigate these things. But this is a really interesting kind of design from what Taiko is doing here. Now, I might be wrong on the actual kind of like on the actual design aspects here, in terms of like the details, but you can go check out this thread in the blog post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I think I'm right, because like you can see here what they're doing. It's not just an optimistic or a fraud proof as well. They're using other ways like SGX, which is Intel SGX as well, coupled with bonds. So you put up a bond of 1,000 Taiko tokens in order to be part of the system, which is the normal way the optimistic fraud proofs work in the first place. All fraud proofs work in the first place, and then it basically has like these different tiers that come right up to the Guardian tier here, which is not contestable. So you can contest it at any stage here, and with economic security backing it, and then eventually it becomes non-contestable because it becomes part of the chain. But anyway, you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Immutable has been on a tear lately. I haven't talked about them in a few weeks here, but they have been landing partnership after partnership after partnership. I mean, it's been crazy. And as you guys know, Immutable is all about the gaming ecosystem within Ethereum. They're building a layer 2 powered by Polygon's technology, a ZK VM powered by Polygon's technology here. But today they announced that they have partnered up with Merit Circle, which is a project that I believe started on Avalanche. So I think that a Merit Circle is either migrating or expanding their Beam ecosystem over to the Immutable ecosystem here, which is great to see. Obviously, with these kind of gaming stuff that's going on now, we want them to be as interoperable as possible, and bringing them into the Polygon ZK family and the Immutable family obviously is a match made in heaven, I think, because when it comes to what Polygon is doing with their ZK tech, they're also building a super chain like what Optimism is doing, where essentially all of these different chains can instantly communicate with each other, and there's no fragmentation of kind of user base, of liquidity, and all that sorts of stuff there. And it makes it much easier for anyone building interfaces on top to also interact with these things and abstract them away for their end users here. So yeah, just great to see this partnership between Immutable and Merit Circle, and I guess like with their Beam platform here. But also on the Polygon note, there was an interesting tweet from Sandeep today that I thought was really great, where he said, contrary to the current rhetoric by investors of monolithic L1s, once ZK proofs solve cross-chain composability, every dapp, DeFi protocol, or any other kind of trustless app will have its own chain. And then he continues on and basically talks about all the different kind of use cases that will have their own chain. So it's all about cross-chain composability now. Most other parts are largely solved with ZK L2s. We are solving for cross-chain composability with Polygon 2.0's aggregation layer, together with Polygon's chain development kit. This would become the Internet 3.0, the trustless internet. And then pseudo Theos from Scroll replied, and he said, most chains won't bother with their own infrastructure. And then Sandeep said, yes, but I didn't say they'll run their own chain. They'll simply use some rollup as a service provider. And that's always been my thesis as well, is where that we've basically collapsed the costs of both monetary costs and also the cost of the effort and research costs and all that. We've collapsed those costs down to essentially zero to run your own rollup and to run your own kind of chain because of these chain development kits like Polygon CDK, like the OP stack, like ZK stack from ZK Sync, and a bunch of others out there, right? We've basically collapsed those costs down. We're essentially making your own rollup. I mean, maybe not now, but in the near future will be as easy as deploying your app to the Ethereum mainnet, right? And then you get that instant kind of composability within that same ecosystem, and then eventually the composability between different ecosystems as well, using all the fancy technology that's coming out of the ZK space here. So yeah, exciting times, guys. I mean, I didn't expect us to see as much progress as we have this soon, to be honest. I mean, it's still 2023. Obviously, we've got less than a month left of 2023. But I remember even a couple years ago, people were saying, oh, ZK rollups are 5 years out. And we've had ZK rollups live all year. And they're not just live, they're thriving. They have users, they have activity. There's so much going on, even in the optimistic rollup space still, even though people said they were going to die. It's just kind of funny because I remember I think 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago now? When Arbitrum and Optimism were going live, everyone was like, oh, we have ZK stuff coming soon. Arbitrum and Optimism are going to be obsolete. And then I remember saying on the Refuel, people that watched back then will know what I'm talking about here. But I remember saying that they're not going to be obsoleted, that it's about so much more than the underlying technology. It really is about the integrations with the ecosystem, the marketing, the business development partnerships, the user experience generally, all that sorts of stuff. And because optimistic rollups came first and built up that ecosystem, and also because they're not as bad as people say they are, the 7-day withdrawal period thing was completely solved by bridges, right? That they're going to be very sticky. And if we go to L2 Beat, I mean, I'll bring it up on my other screen here and just bring it over for you guys. If we go to L2 Beat, I mean, the top two L2s out there by TVL, I guess obviously TVL is an imperfect measure, but still, are Arbitrum 1 and OP mainnet. And guess what's third? It's Base, right? Another optimistic rollup. The ZK rollups start coming in at 4th and 5th place of ZK Sync and DYDX. And then you have like the hybrids, like the Optimiums and the Validiums, and then the ZK rollups. But really, I think there's only going to be, in terms of like the actual stacks, Arbitrum stack and OP stack are going to be the only optimistic rollups that really like pure optimistic rollups that really take off. But then there are hybrid optimistic ZK rollups. Then there are obviously the Optiminiums, and there's just so much. There's like a world here of different things that can be built. And really, they will be built, and we will see which ones people want to use. We'll see which ones are long lasting. It's going to be an exciting time, guys. Like I'm amped for it. But anyway, enough of me being amped about things. One last thing here about L2s, I guess. And fragmentation and I guess like abstraction here. Parsec released their Parsec Explorer today. Now, this is an explorer that shows you a bunch of stuff going on when you plug in an address into it. You can go to parsec.fi to check this out. But what's really cool about this is that it doesn't just check one chain. It checks all of the supported chains here. So if I put in my sassal.eth address, so I'll just copy it across here. So this is sassal.eth here. Comes up instantly, and I search for it, right? I can see everything going on my address. Like, not only does it give me a much better like view of my address than something like Etherscan will, and I guess like a much more detailed view of what's going on, and also kind of funding history and trade flows and all that good stuff there. It's also got the different chains that you can select here. So you can select, if I select Arbitrum 1, it'll show me what I've got on Arbitrum 1. If I select Base, it'll show me what I've got on Base. OP mainnet, right? And then I don't have, on Sassel.eth at least, I don't have any other chains that I've interacted with. But this is, again, another layer of abstraction, not obviously on the on-chain side of things, but on the off-chain side of things and the infrastructure side, where we're basically like, well, here you go. Here's your entire address across all these different chains in one interface. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say it at this point, guys, but we are abstracting away everything, and there will not be a world where users have to worry about all the different layers underneath. That's not what's going to happen. I sound like a broken record at this point, but every day now we're getting a new tool that just abstracts things away, or brings them all together and gets rid of any of the fragmentation. And it's not just unique to Ethereum and L2s, it's just across the entire ecosystem, right? If any of the other kind of like ecosystems need to be consolidated and brought into like a single dashboard or something like that, they will be, for sure. But yeah, you can go check this out for yourself and plug in your own address. I'll leave a link to it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here, we have an update to the Rainbow wallet. So they've added transaction safety features in Rainbow now. So for those of you who use the Rabby wallet and other similar wallets here, you'll and Fire, which is an extension, obviously, as well, you'll notice some of the prompts here, basically telling you exactly what the transaction is doing and warning you of any scams and giving you just more information to go off, which is really great to see, because I think that any wallet that doesn't have this information in it is not going to succeed long term. It needs to be able to show this information to the user to make the user feel safe, because safety should be, and security should be, the absolute #1 priority for any team building in crypto, but especially wallet teams, because wallets are the interface into the on-chain ecosystem. And if you're still using, like I stupidly was when I lost my OP tokens to a fish, just vanilla MetaMask without any of the snaps included in MetaMask, then you really have very limited visibility on what's going on and what you're actually approving and what transactions you're actually doing. So if you do use Rainbow on desktop here on the extension, you can go check out this feature, of course. But as I said, like, there are other wallets that have these features as well, like Rabby. MetaMask has the different snaps you can connect to it as well. Tahoe, there's a few others out there, but this is the future of wallets, guys. There's not going to be a future of mass adoption when we basically throw up these random kind of mumbo jumbo to people and say, here's what's happening, and people read it and like, I don't even know what's happening right now. Like, am I sending all my money to some Nigerian prince or something, right? To some scammer? Who knows? But yeah, anyway, just go check this out on Rainbow's desktop extension if you haven't yet, and I'll link this video in the YouTube description below so you can check it out for yourself. All right, I did say I wanted to talk a bit about crypto Twitter just to end out today's episode. I'll try not to get too ranty with this. You guys know my general view on crypto Twitter. It is, it's not great, but I put out a tweet today where I said the main problem with crypto Twitter is that you have people playing crypto on vastly different time frames. Someone playing crypto for a few months because the market is bullish is not going to be on the same page as someone playing the decades-long game. So play your own game. I think this is true not just for crypto Twitter, but just anything got to do with crypto. Like, if you have people coming in and they're literally only here because they want to make money, and they're going to disappear in a bear market, so they're only here for the bull market, but then you're in crypto because you care about the technology, you want to help the ecosystem thrive, you want to see it thrive over many years, if not decades to come, you are playing a completely different game to that other person. You're basically playing chess while they're playing a quick round of, I don't know, Counter-Strike online or something like that, where they get in and out sort of thing. Whereas you're playing a strategic game, a potentially longer term game. Chess games can go quickly as well, but I'm talking about like a longer term game here. And of course, as usual, these are my loose analogies on the fly here. But the point is that there's no point even conversing with these people because you aren't on the same page. They don't want to learn about the tech. All they want to know is how to make the most money. And you may not necessarily care about how to make the most money or just degenning into shitcoins. And you'd rather talk about the tech. So you're basically out of sync. You're not on the same wavelength and there's no point conversing. Maybe some of these people convert and later on down the line and they become in it for the tech because, as I've said plenty of times before, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. And I think every first cycler starts out, almost every first cycler starts out the same way, where they're less interested in the tech and way more interested in making money. But at some point, right, like it becomes a thing of, okay, well, I've made some money here, or maybe I'm bored of losing money because I've been too much of a degen. I'm actually going to just, study the tech, form some longer term investment theses, and get involved with the community rather than just being a random reply guy who says to all the people that are buying ETH that they're coping because, ETH hasn't moved as much as some random shitcoin or something like that. Like, again, like crypto Twitter, as I said, is not a great place. I don't even know why I'm still on there, to be honest. I feel like I'm just addicted at this point, and it's just like a really bad drug for me, honestly. Also because of the refuel. I reckon it'd be much easier for me to quit crypto Twitter if I wasn't doing the refuel, because I have to keep up to date with things so I can do the refuel, and that's fine. But I feel like if it wasn't for the refuel, I would actually probably quit Twitter altogether, right? Because it just doesn't bring me as much joy as it once did, and there's a lot of crap on there. But anyway, enough ranting about that. As I said, I didn't want to rant too long about that. But yeah, I figured that was worth mentioning on today's episode. But I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.